So I recently posted a image on the community tab with my new HP bar system, which is just the HP bar system from Kingdom Hearts, but implemented into my own game. And I got a question about making a tutorial for it. So I'm going to do two things today. I'm going to make an HP bar which has these little extra like knobs of full extra HP bar. So the way that this works is right now he's got about half an HP bar. After that he's got two more full HP bars, and the widget just takes in the amount of total HP that he has and then figures out the amount of HP bars that it should give him. And then also add in a little bit of flair to make it look not just super bad with only being a solid block of green that goes down. So we'll have a little bit of this rounding to everything. We'll add a little bit of shading to the bar and all that kind of stuff. So let's get started. As a little bit of an aside, a while ago I also made a tutorial about making an HP bar that does this kind of effect, like this ticking down when you damage it. We're not going to do that today because I already made a full tutorial on that, so if you want to implement this as well, you'll need to get both videos and kind of mash them together, but it should be fairly straightforward to do that. Here in a new empty project, I'm going to make a new widget. So let's right click, user interface, widget blueprint, and we'll call this the enemy HP bar, because this is mostly going to be for like target enemies and that kind of stuff. So the way that we'll do this is we'll make a widget that takes care of everything surrounding displaying the HP, and then we'll put that widget onto the actual player HUD as one big total widget. Starting with building out the actual like hierarchy of different elements for this widget. I'm going to start out with a size box, as I often do, and I'm going to then set this screen size, or the thing next to the screen size, how big it actually is like in my view, to being desired, so that I can actually see how big it should be on screen. Then in the size box, I will set the override width and height to whatever values that I personally like. In my case, I went with a 500 in width, and the height actually doesn't really matter. So we can just kind of get rid of that being a override. Inside of that size box, I'm going to put a vertical box because we're going to be stacking a couple of things on top of each other. The first of which is going to be another size box, because this is going to be the HP bar. And here we mostly need the size box for the height override to set how tall the HP bar should be. And it's just nice to be able to do that entirely based on just one number in there. Inside of this size box, I'm going to put a border. You can put it in the image as well. They are effectively the same thing. An image might be a little bit better to do. It's entirely up to what you prefer. The difference is a border can have a child object and an image can not. So an image might technically be slightly better. It will be important though to come into the appearance, into the brush, and then draw as instead of image or border, whichever one you used. I used a border in my own game, but again, image should result the same thing. You're going to set this to rounded box, so you get these rounded little corners. Then in the outline settings, we need to do a couple of things, and we'll come back to this in a moment as well. But I then want to set this to being a fixed radius so that I can set these corner radii on an individual basis, because I want them to be a little bit curved but not super curved, right? That's how you can see this working right now. It also comes with a built-in outline, so we just set the alpha for that outline to being 1, and then we can increase the width of the outline, and it starts creating this black outline around our HP bar, which just looks a little bit better. Now we're going to keep the tint and the color at white for the time being, because we're going to replace this with a material to create a shader effect. But this is going to be the HP bar itself. So now we can collapse this size box for the time being, just to have things be a little bit more organized and not getting lost in what gets added to what. Next up, we do add a border. This one does need to be a border because it's going to have some child objects. And we put that into the vertical box as well. We're going to put that under the size box. And then coming over here into the slot for the vertical box, I'm going to align this to the left so that it just grows as it gets more content added to it. Because we want this to just have like the little HP thing in it. But then as we add in multiple more HP bars, we want this thing to grow to the size of however many HP bars we make it. Inside of this, we put a horizontal box again, because we're gonna put in a couple of things here. Number one is just going to be a text that's going to say HP. So we'll put in the text, we'll call that HP. This border, I'm actually gonna set the brush color to black so that I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. And then we can set the size of this HP text in font to be something much smaller, something like 6 pixels in height. You can adjust the border here a little bit as well in the same way, by the way, if you want this to be also a little bit more rounded. So first and foremost, we can go into the horizontal box and set all of the padding to being a little bit lower. Probably want a little bit of padding to the left, like 2 pixels or something like that, or at least 1. So that's not entirely up to the side. I think I like 2. And then a little bit of padding to the right as well. And then in the border, we go into the brush. We draw it as a rounded box, and you can see that it starts being rounded. But here, again, we set it to a fixed radius, so that we can kind of keep the top of it not rounded. We only want the bottom of it being rounded, because the top is going to actually attach to the HP bar itself. So here you can see they're called X, Y, Z, and W. Personally, I think they should just name this top left, top right, and whatever, but you can just play around with these a little bit and see which one is which. This is the top left, so that's definitely not the one we want. This will be the top right, so those we want to keep at 0. And then these ones we can start rounding out a little bit with like 3 pixels of roundness or something like that. Now then, this border as a whole is very like up against the edge of this HP bar, which I don't like. So I'm gonna set this to be about like 4 units offset, maybe 3 units offset to the right. So give it a little bit of padding to the left. So we kind of get this effect of it being a little like offset, which just looks a little bit nicer, in my opinion. At the top, I'm going to actually do like -1, so that we make sure that these 2 things are properly connected. Otherwise, there might be like 1 single pixel width in between these 2 elements, which doesn't look that good. So now we have our HP bar that actually like says HP below it. You can, of course, make this any font that you like. Like, let's just change this to... There's not that many fonts installed into this project, actually, so never mind. But you can get any new fonts and do whatever you want with that. So now that we have that, we finally add in our last thing here, and there's going to be another horizontal box within this horizontal box. And the reason that we do 2 horizontal boxes inside of each other is that we're going to be able to easily clear this one, but we don't want to clear the top one. This one is going to be the one that holds the individual HP bar widgets. So when we go away and we look at something that's supposed to not have any of them, we can simply say, hey, clear this horizontal box. Because every child in this horizontal box is going to be one of those widgets. We can technically do it with just 1 horizontal box and always just skip over the first index, but it's a little bit more work that way, and we don't want to do a little bit more work. So for this one, it's important to set that as a variable and actually give it a good name. Let's call this HP bar box, or something along those lines. And that's the initial setup for this widget. Now, we're going to make another widget, and then we'll circle back to actually coding this thing. But we'll need the other widget to drive a little bit of code on this. And the widget that we're going to make will be the individual like HP bar thing that's going to get added to this. So let's make a user interface, blueprint widgets, user widget, of course, WBP for blueprint widgets, widget blueprint, whatever. And we'll call this HP, I call it HP nib in my project. I don't know why, but we're going to keep the same name for that just because. We start once again with a size box because that easily lets us set how big things should be on screen. It's a little annoying the way that this works with my scaling, but there we go. And I set this size box to be a width of about 20 and a height of about 10. Again, your mileage may vary as to what looks good for you personally. And in that, we're going to put in another image, and we're going to set that image to render as a rounded box as well. And that's kind of everything there is to that. So this is a much easier widget to set up. So let's set up a little bit of code to make this thing work the way that we want it to work. So we have our image here as a variable. And all that we really need to do is we can get rid of all of these. We just need to make a new custom event. and we'll call that something like set active. And that's just going to take in an input for is active. We'll use that for a branch, and if it is active, we're going to set it to look like one thing, and if it's not active, we're going to set it to look like another thing. So active in this case means, does this HP bar still have like HP stored in it? It's just toggling it between that green state, and then if you go through and you clear an entire HP bar on your enemy, it just toggles to like gray. So active means in the context of it existing, whether or not it still has HP in it, not whether or not it exists. That's a separate concept altogether. So if that is true, we get our image, we set brush from a material. We're going to be making that material in a moment. So for now, we'll just keep that as empty. And then we also need to, annoyingly, set brush, just the brush, because this will populate the image that the widgets are going to be using with a material. It's not actually going to set any of the other stuff about the brush. For that, we need to set brush. So what we do is we get brush from that image as well, and we right click, split that structure pin, and we're going to just kind of like pull through most of these things to keep the same. The only thing that we're going to manually set is splitting the top one here, the brush tint. We want to make sure that this is white, because white is the tint that's just going to be, hey, display the normal color of whatever image we're displaying. But draw as is going to be the same. All of this we can just kind of pull through every one of these structs into whatever we want, just like that. You would think that being able to set this just like material in here would work. It should, but in my experimentation, it didn't. So there might be something that's a little iffy with this set brush when using materials. So that's why we set it from material with this different node. Now, if our activation bool is false, we're kind of going to do the same thing. We just do all of this. Make sure that we have this image reference hooked up to both of these nodes now. The only difference is going to be we set this brush color to being like a dark gray color. And we disconnect the brush image because we do want to make sure that it sets the brush to being nothing. And that's all the code that we need on this HP nib, which means that we can finally go back to the HP bar. And if we just, to show you, add a couple of HP nibs into this bar here, you can see that they start like stacking up just like this and starting to look like a proper HP bar. You can, if you want to, but this is mostly a visual thing, of course, go back into this image and set the width for the outline. Make sure that the alpha is set to 1 to being whatever you like. So have a bit of an outline around it. This looks blurry, by the way, but it's because these are just really small. When you actually add them to the screen, they're going to be like about this size, which means that you won't see them being as blurry. But we don't want to pre-add these nibs because these are going to be dynamically added based on how much HP our enemy has. So let's actually set that up. That's going to be the main thing that we want to do here, right? And for that, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to get rid of the pre-construct and the tick for now. We'll keep the construct event around because we're going to need that in a moment once we actually start setting up materials for this. But for now, we just make a couple of custom events. So add a custom event, and this will be set initial HP. So this is the event that we'll be calling whenever we update what enemy we are seeing. So going from no enemy to some enemy, going from one enemy to the next enemy, kind of depends on your enemy detection systems in whatever game you might be making. I have a couple of different videos on that as well, if you're interested. But by and large, what we're going to do is we're going to take in our enemy, and I'm just going to make that an actor reference for now. In whatever game you might be making, you might have a specific class for your enemies, which makes some amount of sense to make this class type. For the purposes of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to just display the HP that our player character has, because we don't have enemies in this game project, of course. So we're going to get that reference to our enemy, and we're going to right click to convert it to a validated get. Because if this is not a valid enemy, what we want to do is we want to set the visibility of this thing to being hidden. Because if there's no enemies in range, we don't need to show their HP bar, because otherwise we show an HP bar that isn't showing like any enemy stats. That would be kind of weird. But if this is valid, that means that we have an enemy. So we can set this thing to being visible. You can also set it to being non-hit testable if you really care about being able to like not click on it, if you have like click interactions in your game a lot. In this case, I'm just going to set it to visible because that's the most straightforward thing to do. Now, you're going to need to get your health from your enemy, and this entirely, again, depends on how your game implements that. The way that I'm just going to do this is I'm going to set up a quick blueprint interface, so BPI, health utils or something like that, and we'll add in get HP, and then we'll also do a get max HP, because both of those are going to be somewhat relevant here. And both of those just return a simple float. So this will return a float for HP, and max HP will of course return a float for max HP. We'll implement that on a player character toward the end. But for now we have that thing existing. So we take from our enemy, which is going to be our player, but in a real game scenario, this will be our enemy. We get the max HP, because we need to figure out how many HP bars we're going to have. And in my case, I split them up every 250 HP. The math might be a little bit different for you if you decide to do it every 100 or every 1000, every 500, every 678, whatever you prefer. I'm going to stick with the 250 because it's a decently nice and round number. So what we do is we subtract the amount of HP that we have per HP bar from this total. And then we divide that by that same amount. Because what we do there is we make sure that the first HP bar itself doesn't add one of those little nibs. Because if we only have one HP bar, we don't want to add one of those. So this is going to give us a number that excludes the first 250 HP. You could even make this a variable if you really wanted to. Matter of fact, that might actually be a good thing to do. Let's just promote this to a variable, HP per bar. Because we're going to be using, that's very badly spelled, we're going to be using this value quite a lot. So if you want to change this around at a later date, having it as a variable is probably very nice. So let's actually expose that as well, compile and set the default value to 250. So we divide by that as well. Then we seal that, so that's always rounding up to the next integer. And that's going to be promoted to a variable as well. And that will be the amount of health bars that we want to like spawn in. Now, all that said, you only need to really do this if your HP is over that number anyway, right? If we have our HP per bar being larger than the max HP that we have to begin with, yeah, you don't need to do any of this. So you get your max HP and you check whether or not that is less than your HP per bar. Because if it is less than that, we only need one HP bar, which means that we're going to do something slightly different. But in this case, assuming that we have like 1000 HP, this is going to be full, so we're going to be setting the amount of HP bars that we need in total. Then we want to get our size box, the topmost one. Make sure that that is a variable. Let's call this total size box. And then pull that in, because we're going to set this width override to, in my case, again, 500. It might depend on whatever size you need this to be. Again, this could be a variable. We're going to just stick with a hard-coded 500 for now, because that's going to set this HP bar thing to its full size. If we have less than whatever we need for this HP per bar, we're also going to set the override width, but we're going to set it to a lower value. In my case, what we're going to do is we're going to set it to a percentage of that 500. So we get our HP per bar and we divide it by the actual max HP that we have. If we're in this branch to begin with, we will always be sure that this value is going to be under a value of 1, because if this value would be 1 or over, we would be in this branch of things. So this is always going to be a 0 to 1 value. So cutting in here during the editing, I did mess this up. We're not dividing the HP per bar by the max HP. We're dividing the max HP per the HP per bar. So if this is 100 and this is 250, we're dividing 100 by 250, so we're getting a value under 1. Otherwise, you're always going to get a value over 1, which is exactly the opposite of what we want. Then we just multiply that by, you know what, let's actually just make it a variable. After all, total width make that instance editable just because, and the default value for that will be 500. So if we only have 10 HP, it's going to be a super small HP bar. If we have 490, it's going to be almost an entirely full HP bar. And we just plug that into the width override. We also, if we don't have any like extra HP bars, we can just get our HP bar box, which is this one down here that I talked about earlier in the video. And as I said, when I was adding that, we can just clear children, and any like HP bar, like little nibs that were in it, are just going to get deleted because we have less than 1 HP bar's worth of HP, so we don't need secondary HP bar widgets. Now we get into a little bit of trickiness because we're going to be doing a lot of for loops. We're going to be doing a little bit of math, and there's going to just be stuff and things happening. So buckle in, we'll get through it. First and foremost, we get our HP bar box, and then we get all children from that. Because what we're going to do is we actually need to get the length of that array. We want to know how many of these HP bar widgets do we have in here to begin with. And the reason that we need to do that is because we need to compare how many are in there right now versus how many do we need. Because if we have more than we need, we just delete a couple of them and update the ones that still exist. If we have not enough, we add a couple more to the amount that we already have. The reason that we can't just clear and add them all in back together is number one, because then you're creating a bunch of objects unnecessarily, but also because that'll make your HP bar widget flicker a little bit, and that's just kind of ugly. So we're going to be checking whether or not this length is less than the amount of health bars that we need. And we'll put that obviously into a branch. If that is true, we're going to for loop, just a normal for loop, not a for each loop. And we'll start at the index for length plus 1. Because we're going to be adding more stuff to this, right? So we'll start adding at the amount that we have plus 1. If we have 3 and we need 5, we need to start adding in by adding in the 4th. And then of course the last index as such will be the health bar amount that we actually need. So for that, it's relatively easy. We can just create a widget, and that widget will be our HP nibs, because that's the thing that we made specifically for that. And then immediately we can just set active on that. That's the custom event that we made, and we can set it to active being true. Now then, we get our HP bar box finally, and we add a child to that. We add the child that we just made, the HP nub, as content, and we should be good to go. Then we do need to set a couple of things about its like alignment. So this gets you a panel slot object reference. So that's going to be the slot of the box that we just added it to. We need to cast that to the horizontal box slot class, because we know that this is a horizontal box. And then we can set the padding for this item through our blueprint node. So we split that structure pin. And in my case, I just set the padding to the left and to the right and to the top, all at 1. And the padding to the bottom I kept at 0. This is entirely up to your visual tastes and what you like. Then we set the horizontal alignment, and we also set the vertical alignment. And both of those are going to be set to being center. So that is adding new HP bar like nibs to this box. Circling back here real quick to this set active, the way that we're going to set this up, we're going to potentially use event tick to set our current HP states, because the way that I did it uses that little animation that I showed as like a video that I did previously as well, and that needs to happen in event tick. If you're not doing the HP setting in event tick, you need to add in a little bit of extra code here for setting active, and that is checking your enemy's current HP. So we need to get our enemy, which we actually can just do by reference here. So we can get HP from the interface that we made for that. So let's add that back in here. Then we subtract 250, or well, actually we not subtract 250 because we made a variable for that. We set the HP per bar as the thing that we subtract from that. And then we check whether or not the index of our loop multiplied by that same HP per bar is greater than our current HP. And then we invert that bool with a not boolean. This will just check, hey, does this HP bar currently have any right to be displayed as being active or not, more or less? Because what we're doing is we're checking per HP bar, we're multiplying that, my bad, I added an addition note, that's supposed to be multiplication, up to the amount of HP that this HP bar is supposed to represent. And then we compare it to the current HP minus the amount that we would have in a single HP bar. And then if this HP bar represents a number bigger than the HP that we currently have, we then invert that for setting its active state. Because of course, if that represents something that is bigger, we want it to be not active. We're going to do this again in a second for the other path as well. So hopefully that made sense. Talking about the other path, if we get back here and our length is not less than our health bar amount, we're going to need to remove a couple of things. So for that, we get our all children again. I just gonna copy this over to keep things a little bit more readable and neat. That's for each loop over that. And here we're just going to check every index array. Is it greater than the amount of health bars that we need at -1? And the -1 there is entirely to do with the fact that arrays start counting at 0. This health bar starts counting at 1. So this just converts the counting amount to something that like array indexes work with a little bit better. So we check that for every single one. And if that's the case, we can just simply remove it. So we just pull off of it and remove from parents. It is quite as easy as that. And now we kind of do the same thing that we did here with like this whole setup for setting these things to be active, getting the HP for the enemy. We can kind of just copy that over and paste it down here. And the only thing we need to do is if this is false, so let's move this over a little bit more. We then cast this to the HP nib, because this is a generic widget object reference because it's coming from this array over here. We needed to cast to this specific one because we're going to be setting this as active or inactive depending on these values. So the only thing that we need to do here is connect this up to the index array, and then we should have this bit also working. So now we effectively have a dynamically setting amount of little like HP nubbins. And that's the initial setup. So this runs every time we run into a new enemy, right? So let's make a custom event for update HP, and that's going to be updating the current HP that we display. And for that, we're finally going to get into making a material to make these things look not actually like super bad. So let's make a quick material for that, and we'll call that material HP bar. And setting up the material for this is going to be fairly straightforward. It's actually like pretty easy, especially since we're not going to be doing the whole like ticking down health situation. So we set the blend mode in this case to translucent, because part of this widget is going to be see-through with the whole like corners that are being around it. If you don't do this, the corners are just going to be black, which is going to be ugly. So you want this to be translucent. And then you set the material domain to being user interface. Now here we just set up 2 different colors, which you can just do by left clicking while holding the 3. That adds a vector 3, which is just a color. One of which is going to be, in our case, green. And the other one, let's make that a dark gray color. That's going to be the background. And we'll make a scalar, which you can do by holding down 1 and clicking. And we'll set that to be a parameter, which we'll call health. This is going to be a 0 to 1 value of health. So this is how much health the current HP bar has. Let's set that to 0.5 by default so that you can see it working. Now, the simplest implementation of all this is just to add in a linear gradient. And you can just see if I plug this into there for the U gradient, it shows left to right a very black to white gradient, which is exactly what we are looking for using. So we can put that into an if node, and we can say, hey, if A is greater than B or equal to B or less than B, we can output different things. So that's going to go into our final color. And here we check, okay, so if A, which is this, is greater than that, we do this, and otherwise we do gray. This might work the other way around. I always get the order of these if nodes mixed up. So we can set this to 0.1. Yeah, so I did mix this up. Just rotate them around. And now we see it fills from left to right. This is 10%. This is 90%, and it'll just work fine like that. I'm going to set this to 50%, but this still is just a ugly solid green block, right? So the way that we can fix that is to add in a lerping node here. So we're going to lerp between this color of green and a darker color of green. And the way that we set that up is also using the linear gradient, but we're going to be using the V gradient, because the V gradient, as nobody will be surprised by hopefully, is a top to bottom gradient. So we can fairly easily use that. I'm going to add in a multiplication node, set that to a value of 2, a power node, set that to a value of 2 as well, and then a subtraction node, which is going to subtract some from this. This will just be a couple of different values that you can play around with to kind of move along where the gradient exists, how sharp the gradient is, all that kind of stuff. We do want to make sure to saturate that so that it is actually between a 0 and 1 value, because we're going to put this into the alpha of this thing. And we're going to be lerping between this color and this color divided by, in my case, 3, but this is again depending on how dark you want the gradient to be. I want this to be less or more, but you're going to put that into there. And then the output of the lerp will replace this green color in our if node. And now you will see that it will have a little bit of shading to it. Again, you can manipulate this, setting this to 5, kind of like increases where it is. Setting this to 3 makes it sharper. Setting this back to just 1 makes it a little bit more of a gradient again. And you can then fine-tune offset this by maybe changing the subtraction. I found that the way that I like it to look is just with 2, 2, and 1. And this only obviously works on the green part. You can implement it on the gray part as well if you wanted to. You would just add in this division and this lerp after the if node instead. Wonderful thing is, if we now change this color, we only have one color to change, and that shading part will work on any color that we put into here. So if we make this a parameter, it will work just fine. I'm not going to make it a parameter for now, because we're not going to set the color lock dynamically on any of these. But if in your game you have multiple different stat bars, this is a material that you can easily reuse. Then I'm also going to make a material instance of this. Material instance full HP. And in that, we're going to just set the global value for this to being 1. And the reason that we do that is then we can easily go into the HP nib and just give it this material. It doesn't need to be dynamic or anything. We can just give it this material. And if we then decide to change anything about the way our HP bar material looks, the HP nibs will use that same shaded material. So we can go into here, make sure the image is selected, and then we just select our HP bar of like full HP material. And our HP nib has the shaded material now. Fantastic. Going back into the actual enemy HP bar, we can just give it the HP bar material for previewing purposes. But obviously this is going to need to be dynamic, because we're going to be setting this as we get damaged to different values. So that's why we kept the event construct in the blueprint graph of this HP enemy bar around, because we're going to create a dynamic material instance of that HP bar material. And we'll promote that to a variable, because we're going to be using this a lot, and this will be the HP material. And we'll get our image, which is this one, I think. Naming them a little bit better might be good, but it is that image. And then we'll set brush from the material that we just made. And now that image in our UI is using this dynamically created material. So when we update this material, the image will update with it. So with that, we can now finally go into our update HP thing that we just made. And for update HP, what I like to do is make an input for the enemy that we're going to be updating for, which can just be a actor reference. Because we want to check, hey, are we updating for the same enemy that we've been updating for all this time? So we're going to check, hey, the enemy that we're trying to set this stuff for, is that not equal to the enemy reference that we already have? Because if so, we need to rerun this set initial HP, because we now have an entirely different enemy that we're working with, right? So we set our new enemy value, so get our enemy and set it to whatever enemy we just gave in, and then we run the set initial HP function real quick, because it might have a totally different HP setup. After that, we're going to go into another branching node in either case. So this is just a little bit of a detour to set up new initial HP, but after that, both of these are going to go down the same route again, which is getting our enemy reference and getting the max HP of it. So we can just move that over there, which you can do by holding control while sliding around these pins, which is kind of nice. And then we're going to check, hey, is our maximum HP in this case greater than the HP that we want to associate per HP bar? Because again, there might be slightly different code depending on if we're working with one HP bar or multiple HP bars. Because if we're just working with one HP bar, this is actually pretty straightforward and easy. Because all we need to do at that point is we need to get our current health and our max health. So we might as well get both of those right here actually. So also get HP from our enemy. And what we do is we get our HP and we divide it by our max HP. And then we get our HP material and we set scalar parameter value. And we're going to set the value to the outcome of that. Now, it is important that you do make sure that you have the proper name for your scalar parameter. So just go into your material and copy it over and paste it in, because making a typo here can be devastating. Because you won't notice there's a typo, it won't work, you'll get frustrated, it's a whole mess, just copy and paste it over. This is the easy bit. If you have more than one HP bar, you're going to need to do a little bit of extra math to figure out, okay, but where in this HP bar am I percentage-wise? It's not that complicated, but it takes a little bit of extra math. But by and large, we copy over this setting of this parameter because we still obviously need to do that. The only difference is that we don't really need the max health in this case. The only thing that we need is the normal health. And we're going to be doing a modulo on that. And a modulo is just a division where it returns the remainder of the division for you. So if we have, let's say, 600 HP and we modulo that with our HP per bar, which is 250. With a division, we can easily do like 500 divided by 250, which means that our remainder for that is going to be 100, because we can't do another 250 without going over, right? For visual purposes, I like to then just add in one more HP, so that if the HP bar is technically empty, it doesn't show a fully empty HP bar. That just looks a little bit odd. So adding in like an extra sliver of HP, for the most part doesn't matter, but if the HP bar is almost empty, it just gives a little bit more of a like visual feedback to the player. This +1 is entirely optional. Again, it's purely for a visual thing. And then we just divide that by the HP per bar. So this gets you the percentage of HP left within the bar that you're currently like hacking away at. So that's going to go into the scalar parameter value. Then we need to make sure that, hey, maybe we just went through an entire new HP bar. So we need to go through and then check all the HP bars on whether or not they should be active. You can optimize it a little bit more, but it's something that's only going to happen every so often. So it's probably not worth doing like super complicated stuff for this. So we're going to get our HP bars health amount or whatever we call that. And we're going to just do a for loop between 0 and that number. Then we'll get our HP bar box. We get a child at a specific index, and that's going to be the index for this, which means we might as well do a for each loop over this box. To be fair, I don't know why I'm not doing that. There might be a reason that I'm not doing a for each loop here. Feel free to try it out. If it doesn't work, don't blame me. And we cast that to the HP nib widget class that we made. And then we set that as being active or not based on a little bit of math that we're going to be doing here in a moment. We once again want to get our HP value, not our max HP, but our normal HP value. And we're going to be subtracting from that the HP that we do per bar. And then we just check, hey, this index of this for each loop multiplied by our HP per bar, is that greater than that value? And then not boolean to invert and set active. This is the same bit of code that we did up here. This just checks, hey, have we beaten this HP bar yet, more or less. So ideally, you would then run this update HP only when you know that damage has been dealt to whatever you're dealing damage to. But that is our HP bar widget. So now that we have all of that done, let's make a new widget to actually add this to the screen, because it's been a moment since we started this tutorial. It's actually going a lot longer than I thought it would initially. Let's call this screen HUD. And this one is going to be fairly easy, luckily. What it will do is we'll just add in a canvas panel. In that canvas panel, we'll add in our HP bar. And here you can see the HP bar sizes with whatever like size this thing is. That's not what we want to do. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to right click this and we're going to wrap that in effectively anything will do. We can wrap it in like a size box or a vertical box or a horizontal box or whatever. But now we can set this size box to being whatever size we want it to be. Go into the enemy HP bar and we set this to just align to the left. We see that no matter how big we make the size box, as long as it's at least bigger than the HP bar itself, it's going to stop growing at whatever size we told it to stop growing at, which is good. So just give it like a rough size that we need it to be, then put it at like the top left, top right of the screen, whatever you want it to be. Probably want to like properly set the anchors for it, at least somewhat. Then make that variable, go into our event graph, and we're gonna on event construct in our HP bar, set enemy. I'm just gonna set that to get player character. Again, if you have like a actual enemy detection system in your game or whatever, you would use that, obviously. And for ease of use, what I'm just going to do is I'm also going to use enemy HP bar update HP on every frame. Again, ideally, you wouldn't do that. Ideally, you would do this only whenever you actually hit something. But now, if we go into, let's just go third person character, and on its begin play, we make that widget. So begin play, create widget. We create a widget for our screen HUD and we add that to the viewport. Now all we need to do is actually implement that like interface that we made at the beginning of the video. So we can do that in class settings, implemented interfaces, just look for BPI, health utils. That gets us our HP and our max HP. I'm just going to set up some variables super quick and easy for that. So HP, max HP, both of those should be floats. Let's set their default values let's set them by default to 100 so that you can see that it's a smaller HP bar at first. And then we'll make in those interfaces, we'll return max HP when we call for max HP and we'll return our HP when we call for HP. And then we can make a simple debug key for F or something like that, which is going to take our HP and subtract, let's say 10 from it. And set that to our new HP value. So this is just a very basic like damage system. And actually thinking about it, we don't even need to set this initial thing in here. We only need an event tick to set it to player character. Because whenever we run this, if it does this check like, hey, our new enemy is equal to our previous enemy by default is going to be nothing. So a new enemy, which is going to be our player, is going to be not equal to it. So that's going to run our initialize HP thing to begin with. So that's actually like quite relevant that we don't like preload that value in there. But of course, it does need to still hook up to this enemy HP bar reference. So now, if we play the game, you'll be able to see that we have a relatively short HP bar because we only have 100 HP. Which actually I'll show you if I press the F key, it does actually like subtract HP from it, which is good. But then if I go back in here and I set this to being like 600 instead, so let's set both of these to 600, you'll see that we have a full length HP bar with a couple of these little like HP nubs in it. Now there's a little bit of alignment that you might want to do to like fine tune this stuff, and they are still being set to white. And that is because I entirely forgot to go back in. And here, when we set these by material, we want to set these to our full HP material. Otherwise, it sets them to just an empty image. So now you can see, after we've done that, if the F1 thing disappears, it shows them properly with like their HP little knobs down there. And if I damage myself beyond losing an HP bar, it grays one of them out and it starts on the next HP bar. And if I go all the way down there, it starts with my last HP bar. And if I go all the way down there, like in a game, obviously I will now be dead. So our HP bar works. Again, there might be a little bit of messing around that you want to do here to actually make these things align a little bit better. So you could start by doing is going back in here and just adding a couple of these little nibs into this box just by default, and then seeing like, this thing is actually like pretty badly aligned, so let's align that to the center here. Maybe give it a little bit more padding to the top and to the bottom as well. So let's say padding to the top like 1, and maybe padding to the top like 2. Maybe they both just need to be 2, something like that. Maybe this needs to be like 3. And then if you want to like really test them out, you do want to go into these little like nubs and set these to being centered both horizontally and vertically, because that's how they're going to be looking when they get procedurally added. And now it will look a little bit better, a little bit more like properly centered, all that kind of stuff. So we have a functioning HP bar that works and looks pretty neat, all things considered as well. So this was a little bit of a longer tutorial than I usually do for relatively simple stuff, but there's just a lot of moving parts to this. I got the question of, hey, make a tutorial for this please, and I actually think that this is a pretty like neat system for HP bars to begin with. Again, I didn't necessarily come up with the concept of this myself. I took this straight from the modern Kingdom Hearts games, but that is how you would implement a HP system to look like a modern Kingdom Hearts game. As always, the project files are down below in the description for patrons and YouTube members. If you want to help out supporting the channel, it does help a lot, especially with like more in-depth videos like this, which can take a little while to make. And a very big thank you to all my patrons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help support the channel or get any of the project files in any of my tutorials, there's a link down below to the Patreon page to support me, or alternatively as a YouTube member. And of course, an extra massive thank you to my Cave Digger tier supporters, Sergey Thomas and Mauricio Farias. And my Cave Student tier supporters, Oiku and Earl Monsville Urno.